At 4:42 a.m. on February 12, 2023, Border Agent Frank Dalton's flashlight ray froze on a concealed steel chamber inside a livestock truck. Behind the welded panel, $15.4 million in raw diamonds transported across the Rio Grande under cartel commands. The operator's hands trembled, the wasteland wind shrieked, and Frank realized if he disclosed this, he'd be deceased before dawn. Instead, he chose a different path. This tale's going to require exactly 14 minutes to recount, and you won't accept where it concludes. Before we begin, please press that subscribe button and give this narrative a like. It assists me in continuing to deliver more incredible true crime stories. You won't want to miss a single turn in Frank Dalton's account. But this narrative didn't begin with a desperate driver stealing millions from the criminal enterprise. It commenced 3 years prior with a regular delivery assignment that would expose the largest illegal financial scheme in the Southwest and transform an ordinary operator into the most hunted thief on 2 continents. Billy Crawford had been operating trucks for 30 years when he entered the confined office of Southwestern Logistics on a blazing Tuesday morning in June 2021. The business functioned out of a modified trailer behind a truck station in Las Cruces, New Mexico. No markers, no promotion, just verbal recommendations among operators who didn't pose too many inquiries about questionable freight. "You, Billy?" inquired the secretary, a hefty woman with weary eyes. "Carlos has been expecting you since 9. He dislikes being delayed." Carlos Mendez appeared like every other mid-tier criminal supervisor Billy had met over 3 decades on the highway. Costly boots, heavy gold chain around his throat, anxious energy that originated from managing other people's funds. He evaluated Billy with the skilled eye of someone who'd employed hundreds of operators and handled severely those who let him down. 30 years on the highway? Carlos inquired, browsing through Billy's work history with groomed fingers. "I observe here, you've transported everything from furniture to heavy equipment. Any freight you won't handle?" 32 years next month, Billy responded, settling into a plastic seat that had witnessed better decades. Spotless record, no crashes, no DUIs, no failed deliveries. As for freight, I don't pose questions and I don't open containers. Your affairs are your affairs. Carlos grinned for the first time, showing gold caps on his front teeth. "Correct answer, we require dependability above everything else. The routes are straightforward, collection to delivery, sealed containers, no stops except fuel, and required DOT rest periods. You follow the escort vehicle, keep radio contact, and deliver on time." Billy nodded slowly. In driver language, that meant illegal goods, narcotics, stolen merchandise, maybe untaxed cigarettes or weapons. Nothing he hadn't transported before during tougher times. The secret was keeping plausible denial. Officially, he never knew what was in the containers. "Payment is $2,000 per route, cash," Carlos continued, leaning back in his seat. "No documentation, no tax papers, no bank transfers. You take the funds and forget where you obtained them." Questions? $2,000 cash was generous for a standard route, but not excessively high enough to suggest valuable freight. Low enough to avoid drawing federal notice. Billy had witnessed this arrangement before. "What type of cargo am I transporting?" and Billy asked, knowing the response would be intentionally unclear. "The type that pays $2,000 cash per route," Carlos replied, his smile vanishing. "The type where intelligent drivers don't ask additional questions." Billy grasped the message. Don't inquire, don't reveal. Collect your funds and stay silent. It was an agreement that had functioned for both parties throughout the Southwest for decades. "When do I begin?" "Tonight. Collection at Warehouse 17 outside El Paso, delivery to Phoenix. Straightforward route, direct shot on I-10. Should require 8 hours, including your required rest period." That initial job should have been Billy's last job. The warehouse sat in an industrial area that appeared more like a military base than a shipping facility. Razor wire topped 20-foot concrete barriers. Security cameras monitored every angle. Armed guards directed him through steel gates that belonged in a maximum security prison, not a freight terminal. The guards weren't regular security either. These were tough men with military posture and serious weapons. They verified Billy's identification against a list, inspected his truck thoroughly, and accompanied him to the loading platform with professional precision. 2 containers got loaded onto his flatbed trailer, standard 40-foot shipping units, but considerably heavier than normal. The documentation listed industrial machinery weighing 18,000 pounds per container. Billy's onboard truck scale indicated closer to 25,000 pounds each. Whatever was inside those containers, it certainly wasn't industrial machinery. Carlos entered a black Chevrolet Suburban that would accompany Billy to Phoenix. 2 more vehicles joined the convoy, a Ford pickup truck with darkened windows and a Cadillac Escalade. 3-vehicle escort for freight supposedly worth $50,000 according to the shipping document. $50,000 in industrial machinery requires a 3-vehicle escort and armed guards, Billy whispered as they rolled through the warehouse gates onto I-10. Either these individuals are extremely cautious or I'm transporting something worth a hell of a lot more than they're revealing to me. The route went smoothly despite Billy's increasing suspicions. Delivery to a high-end metals merchant in Scottsdale, another facility with serious security. The business appeared legitimate, expensive office building, professional staff, proper licensing displayed prominently. But the receiving dock was separated from the main building, and Billy never observed the actual container contents during unloading. Cash payment, firm handshake, drive home. Easy funds if you could live with not knowing what you were carrying and not caring about the legal consequences. For 6 months, Billy made the route twice a week without incident. El Paso to Phoenix, El Paso to Las Vegas, occasionally El Paso to Albuquerque. Always the same arrangement, sealed containers, armed escort, cash payment. He saved $48,000 in 6 months, more than he'd earned in the previous 2 years, combined operating legitimate freight. Billy observed problems with each route. The container seals were cheap plastic zip ties instead of secure steel seals. Routes avoided checkpoints and used specific truck stations. Delivery points were precious metals. Merchants, perfect money laundering establishments. Carlos and his men spoke Spanish, assuming Billy wouldn't comprehend, but he caught key words: lavado, washing, banco, bank, oro limpio, clean gold. They were discussing industrial-scale financial crimes. The evening everything changed began exactly like any other routine delivery. Billy pulled into the Sierra Blanca truck station around midnight for fuel and his required DOT rest period. Federal regulations required 8 hours off-duty after 11 hours operating, plenty of time for Carlos to handle whatever mysterious business he conducted at these carefully selected stops. While Billy checked his tire pressure and performed his routine pre-trip inspection, he noticed something that made his blood freeze. The container seals weren't just cheap plastic, they were obviously tampered with. Fresh cuts in the plastic had been crudely repaired with matching zip ties, but the repair work was clearly recent. "Someone's been inside these containers," Billy whispered to himself, crouching beside the trailer in the dim security lighting. Recently. Maybe within the last few hours. That's when he heard Carlos talking on his phone near the diesel pumps, voice raised in obvious frustration and anger. Billy's Spanish understanding was good enough to catch the important parts of what sounded like a heated argument. $12 million in each container, Swiss gold bars, and clean bills. Casino manager expects exact count by morning. Any shortage comes out of our percentage. No excuses this time. Billy's hands went completely numb as the full implications hit him. $12 million per container. He was transporting $24 million in illegal funds across state lines. This wasn't contraband. This was industrial-scale financial crime that probably financed half the criminal activity in the Southwest. His first instinct was pure panic. Getting caught with this freight meant federal prison and asset forfeiture that would destroy what little he'd managed to save over 30 years. Getting caught stealing from it meant vanishing permanently and never being seen again. But as the initial shock wore off, curiosity took over. Billy Crawford had always been a natural problem solver, and this was the largest, most dangerous problem he'd ever encountered. The kind of problem that could either destroy him completely or transform his life forever. Over the next hour, while Carlos handled documentation and made more phone calls inside the truck station, Billy used every technique he'd learned in 30 years of mechanical troubleshooting and repair work. A small mirror mounted on a telescoping rod, the exact type used for checking hard-to-reach engine components, allowed him to peer inside container number 1 through a tiny gap where the door seal had shifted during loading. What he saw changed everything. He thought he knew about his employer and his freight. Swiss bank deposit boxes stacked floor to ceiling in perfect rows, each one stamped with official seals and serial numbers. Gold bars catching the overhead security lights, arranged with military precision like some Hollywood movie vault. Bundles of cash wrapped in authentic bank paper, all hundreds and fifties with Federal Reserve bands still intact. Billy's $2,000 fee suddenly felt like the insult it obviously was. He was risking federal conspiracy charges to move $24 million for a fraction of 1% commission while taking all the legal risks if anything went wrong. Footsteps on gravel made him freeze in place. Carlos was walking back toward the truck, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in rapid Spanish to someone who was clearly very unhappy about something, involving missing money and suspicious timing. Billy quickly stowed the mirror device and pretended to check his load-securing straps. His heart hammered so loudly he was certain Carlos would hear it from 20 feet away. "Everything fine back here, Billy?" Carlos asked, suspicion creeping into his voice as he approached the trailer. "Just making sure we're properly balanced," Billy replied, forcing his voice to remain steady and professional. Truck was pulling slightly left earlier. Must be the load distribution or maybe tire pressure differences. Carlos walked completely around the trailer, checking the container seals and door latches with the thoroughness of someone who'd learned not to trust anyone completely. Billy held his breath, praying the man wouldn't notice the tiny gap where he'd inserted the mirror or the almost imperceptible scratches around the seal area. After what felt like an hour, but was probably only 30 seconds, Carlos nodded with apparent satisfaction and climbed back into his Suburban. Billy exhaled slowly and started his truck engine with hands that were still shaking slightly. $24 million, more money than he would see in 10 lifetimes of legitimate trucking, riding just 6 feet behind his head in containers he wasn't supposed to know anything about. The drive to Phoenix was absolute torture. Every mile marker felt like a year passing. Billy's mind raced with possibilities, calculations, and terrifying scenarios while he maintained normal speed and radio contact with the escort vehicles. He was carrying proof of a massive money laundering operation that probably involved dozens of businesses and hundreds of millions in illegal transfers. Carlos and his associates weren't just simple smugglers moving contraband across state lines. They were key operators in a sophisticated network that was processing hundreds of millions in criminal profits through legitimate American businesses, probably funding criminal operations across multiple states. Billy studied the operation systematically. 3 pickup warehouses near the border, all using the same shell freight company. Deliveries went to businesses dealing in precious metals and jewelry. Operations perfect for processing large amounts of gold and cash without federal scrutiny. His handlers were Mexican cartel, but clients were American businessmen. Billy was the invisible middleman, moving dirty money for pennies. He also learned about his predecessor through conversations at truck stations and driver lounges. Jake Morales had operated for the cartel for 2 years before quitting suddenly in March 2021, just 3 months before Billy got hired. The story that emerged from other drivers was both chilling and instructive. Jake was a solid operator, said Eddie Vasquez, a veteran hauler who'd known Jake for over a decade. but he started asking too many questions about his freight, wanting to know what was really in those containers. Next thing you know, he's gone without notice. Company said he moved to California to operate for his brother-in-law, but his ex-wife never heard from him again. Another operator, Tom Rodriguez, was more direct about Jake's fate. Word on the CB is Jake turned up deceased in a ditch outside Juarez with 2 bullets in his head. Officially, he just disappeared without forwarding address. But guys who haul for the cartels don't just disappear voluntarily. Billy calculated the financial numbers obsessively during his off-duty hours. In 6 months of operating, he'd moved approximately $300 million in laundered money across state lines. His total earnings, $48,000 before expenses. The cartel was paying him roughly 0.016% of the freight value while he absorbed 100% of the legal risks. That's when Billy Crawford made the decision that would change everything. He was going to take his proper cut. Planning the first theft required 2 weeks of careful preparation and research. Billy studied container security systems, timing windows, and detection methods used by professional freight thieves. The plastic seals were laughably easy to defeat with proper tools, but replacing them required identical zip ties and careful attention to serial number sequences. His initial target was deliberately modest, a single $100 bill extracted from the middle of a $50,000 cash bundle. Billy practiced the extraction technique using his own money until he could remove a bill with precision tweezers without disturbing the bank wrapper or leaving obvious evidence. The opportunity came during a routine fuel stop in Deming, New Mexico. Carlos was inside the truck station paying for diesel and handling his mysterious phone business while Billy performed his required pre-trip inspection, 30 seconds with the telescoping mirror to locate the target, 15 seconds to position the extraction tools, another 15 seconds to complete the theft. As Billy carefully pocketed the stolen bill, footsteps approached on the gravel. Carlos was returning earlier than expected, phone still pressed to his ear, as he conducted what sounded like another heated argument in Spanish. "What are you doing back there, Billy?" Carlos asked, suspicion clear in his voice as he approached the trailer. Billy held up his tire pressure gauge with studied casualness, checking load balance again. "Truck's been pulling left since we left El Paso. Thought maybe one of the containers might have shifted during loading." Carlos walked completely around the trailer, examining the container seals and door latches with professional thoroughness. Billy forced himself to breathe normally and maintain eye contact, knowing any sign of nervousness would trigger a complete search of both truck and operator. "Everything looks secure to me," Carlos finally concluded, "but keep monitoring that pulling sensation. Last thing we need is a breakdown or accident that brings state police attention." Billy nodded professionally and climbed back into his cab. His heart was pounding like a jackhammer, but he'd passed the crucial first test. More importantly, he'd proven that theft was not only possible, but relatively simple with proper preparation and timing. Success made him significantly bolder. Over the next month, Billy refined his theft techniques and escalated gradually according to a carefully planned schedule. Week 1, single bills extracted from different cash bundles across multiple containers, $500 total value. Week 2, small pieces of jewelry that wouldn't be missed immediately during routine inventory, $2,000 estimated value. Week 3, 2 thin gold wafers carefully shaved from larger bars using precision tools, approximately $5,000 worth of pure gold. Each theft was meticulously calculated to stay well below established detection thresholds. Billy studied shrinkage rates in legitimate shipping operations where 0.1% losses were considered normal business expenses. He kept his thefts well below that statistical level, spreading them across multiple containers and shipments to avoid creating patterns. But during week 3, Carlos's partner, Miguel, made an unscheduled inspection that nearly ended Billy's criminal career before it properly began. Billy was in the middle of shaving gold wafers from a bar When headlights appeared in his side mirrors, Miguel's pickup truck was approaching the rest area where Billy had stopped for his required DOT break, arriving 2 hours earlier than any previous inspection. There was absolutely no time to properly replace the container seal or clean up evidence of tampering. Billy shoved his cutting tools into a hidden compartment and rolled under the truck just as Miguel's boots hit the gravel parking lot. "Billy, you under there, man," Miguel called out in accented English. "Yeah, checking for hydraulic leaks," Billy replied, forcing complete casualness into his voice while lying on his back with stolen gold in his pockets. "Think I heard something dripping during the last fuel stop?" Miguel walked directly to the containers and began examining the seals with a small flashlight. Billy held his breath, knowing the fresh cuts would be completely obvious under close inspection. But Miguel seemed more focused on the door latches and locking mechanisms than the plastic seal ties. "Everything looks fine from out here," Miguel reported to Carlos over his handheld radio. "Operator seems a little nervous, though maybe we should start watching him more closely on future routes." Billy waited until Miguel's taillights disappeared completely before emerging from under the truck. The close call should have ended his theft operations immediately, but instead it taught him valuable lessons about timing, preparation, and the importance of better cover stories for future operations. He needed to become much smarter about the technical aspects of the thefts. Billy spent 3 months preparing his first major score. He bought lead bars, gold paint, and precision equipment. His garage became a counterfeiting lab where he practiced until fake gold bars were indistinguishable from real ones. The target for his first major theft was carefully selected after weeks of surveillance and planning. A container carrying exactly 100 gold bars with an estimated value of $4.8 million. Billy planned to replace 12 bars with lead duplicates, stealing approximately $480,000 while keeping the theft below 10% of the total freight value. The heist took place during a severe thunderstorm near Roswell, New Mexico. Perfect natural cover. Lightning provided a believable explanation for any electronic malfunctions or communication disruptions that might occur during the operation. Billy pulled into a remote rest area and immediately activated his carefully prepared plan. First, he cut power to his truck's GPS tracking system, using a pre-installed electrical fault that would appear to be storm damage to any investigator. Then, he opened container number 2. Using professional tools hidden in his sleeper compartment, working by flashlight in the pouring rain, Billy systematically replaced 12 gold bars with painted lead duplicates. He used his precision digital scale to verify exact weights, ensuring the container's total mass remained completely unchanged. Each fake bar had been individually aged and weathered to match the originals perfectly. The entire operation took exactly 43 minutes from start to finish. Billy was in the process of resealing the container when headlights appeared on the highway. New Mexico State Police responding to his pre-planned electrical emergency call for assistance. The responding trooper was young, maybe 25 years old, with the eager helpfulness of someone relatively new to law enforcement. "Having some trouble out here tonight?" he asked, examining Billy's truck with professional concern. "Alternators acting up pretty bad," Billy explained, showing fake diagnostic readings on a handheld electronic meter. "Lightning must have fried something in the charging system. Think I got it sorted out now, though." Billy had prepared extensively for exactly this scenario. His toolkit contained authentic alternator parts, genuine repair manuals, and complete documentation showing a realistic history of electrical problems with his truck. The trooper even volunteered to help him reconnect a battery cable that had been deliberately loosened. "Drive safe out there," the officer advised. "These wasteland storms can be absolutely brutal on vehicle electronics, especially older trucks like yours." Billy watched the patrol car disappear into the storm before allowing himself to smile with satisfaction. He'd just executed the perfect crime, stealing nearly $500,000 in gold, while state police helped him establish an alibi for the timing. The stolen gold bars were concealed in specially designed compartments that had been professionally welded into his truck's chassis over several weeks. To any casual inspector, they appeared to be standard structural reinforcements designed to handle heavy loads. Even trained drug detection dogs wouldn't alert to gold bars. But success brought new challenges and increased scrutiny. Carlos began noticing minor timing discrepancies in delivery schedules that suggested something unusual was happening during transport. Billy's electrical problems and mechanical breakdowns were creating a pattern that a suspicious mind might eventually connect to the missing freight. 2 weeks after the successful gold bar theft, Carlos installed military-grade motion sensors in all containers. These devices are extremely sophisticated, Carlos explained, showing Billy a sensor unit about the size of a smartphone. They detect any container opening that lasts longer than 60 seconds and immediately transmit alerts to our security monitoring system. False alarms result in expensive additional security fees, so don't mess with the containers unless there's a genuine emergency. Billy nodded with apparent understanding while mentally filing away crucial technical information. Motion sensors meant he needed to significantly upgrade his theft capabilities and develop countermeasures for electronic surveillance systems. Billy spent 3 months mastering electronics and building signal jammers. He practiced opening containers in 59 seconds while maintaining perfect environmental conditions. His next target, $2.8 million cash shipment. He prepared newspaper bundles wrapped in authentic bank paper to replace the stolen money. The heist operation took place during another mechanical breakdown. Billy jammed the sensors and replaced $400,000 with newspaper bundles. 58 seconds total. As he transferred the stolen money to hidden compartments throughout his truck, Miguel's vehicle appeared unexpectedly in the distance. Another unscheduled inspection, but this time, Billy was completely prepared with better cover stories and props. Hydraulic leaks definitely getting worse, Billy announced, pointing to transmission fluid he'd strategically sprayed on the ground for visual authenticity. Going to need a real mechanic when we reach Vegas, or this truck won't make it back to El Paso. Miguel conducted a thorough examination of the truck, but discovered nothing suspicious. The stolen cash was concealed in compartments designed to look exactly like standard hydraulic fluid reservoirs. Even if Miguel had opened them for inspection, he would have seen only transmission fluid and mechanical components. "Get it repaired quickly," Miguel instructed. "Carlos doesn't tolerate delays or mechanical problems that might attract police attention during breakdowns." But Billy understood that the surveillance net was tightening around him. Carlos had begun following his truck with small drones, checking odometer readings for unauthorized mileage and timing every fuel stop and rest break. They clearly suspected someone was stealing from the shipments, but hadn't yet identified the specific source of the losses. That's when Billy spotted what would become his ultimate opportunity. A super shipment scheduled for September 2024 that would be the largest single money transfer in the operation's entire history. Intelligence gathered from carefully overheard conversations indicated this shipment would contain $15 million in gold bars, being moved from cartel collection points in El Paso to money laundering operations in Las Vegas. The planning phase consumed 4 full months of intensive preparation. Billy systematically bribed a truck station mechanic to provide legitimate breakdown documentation and repair cover stories. He prepared precision lead bar replacements for exactly 200 gold bars. He studied the planned route obsessively, identifying the perfect location for conducting a 6-hour theft operation without detection. Everything had to execute flawlessly. This would be his retirement score. Enough funds to disappear permanently and start a completely new life under a different identity. September 2nd, 11:30 p.m. Billy activated his prepared engine trouble scenario at a remote rest area outside Albuquerque that was supposedly closed for renovation work. The location provided complete privacy and isolation from potential witnesses or law enforcement patrols. Billy deployed his full array of electronic countermeasures and began the most ambitious theft in modern cartel history. The containers held exactly what his intelligence gathering had predicted: 200 gold bars with a total value of approximately $15 million in current market prices. Billy worked methodically and systematically, replacing each authentic gold bar with a carefully prepared lead duplicate and transferring the real gold to hidden compartments distributed throughout his truck's chassis and freight areas. 3 hours into the operation, headlights appeared in the distance, moving at high speed. Billy's heart stopped completely. The approaching vehicles belonged to Carlos's security convoy, 3 SUVs approaching the rest area much earlier than any previous inspection schedule. There was absolutely no time to complete the operation properly or clean up evidence of the theft. Billy grabbed as many gold bars as physically possible and rolled under his truck just as the convoy arrived. Millions of dollars in stolen gold pressed against his chest as he lay motionless in the dirt and gravel. "Operators probably sleeping in his cab," one of Carlos's men said in Spanish, "but something doesn't feel right about this breakdown. Check those containers thoroughly for any signs of tampering." Billy counted at least 4 sets of boots walking around his truck in the darkness. Through the gap between the chassis and ground, he could see their faces clearly: hard men carrying weapons, systematically looking for any evidence of theft or tampering. One security team member spotted fresh tool marks on container number 1. "These scratches look recent," he reported, "maybe from tonight." Carlos examined the marks personally with a powerful flashlight. Nah, just normal wear and tear. These containers take serious beatings on rough roads and during loading operations. The inspection continued for 23 agonizing minutes. Billy's legs went completely numb from maintaining the same cramped position, but he didn't dare move even slightly. Finally, the boots walked away, and engine sounds indicated the convoy was departing. "False alarm," Carlos reported over his radio system. "Operator checks out clean. Probably just legitimate bad luck with mechanical problems." Billy waited until the taillights completely disappeared before crawling out from under the truck. He'd successfully stolen approximately $8 million in gold bars, but security cameras at the supposedly closed truck station had recorded the entire operation from multiple angles. Discovery was absolutely inevitable. Billy estimated he had maybe 12 hours before the theft was detected and the manhunt began. He quickly completed his fake repairs and drove toward Las Vegas, knowing this would be his final delivery for the cartel. At the casino delivery point, he watched surveillance cameras tracking his every movement. The personnel unloading his containers were different from previous deliveries: harder looking, more suspicious, obviously enhanced security. Billy collected his final $2,000 payment and drove away from the casino, immediately implementing the escape plan he'd been developing for months. By 6 a.m., the casino's professional assay equipment revealed the lead bar substitutions. Carlos's security team discovered sophisticated GPS jamming equipment and other evidence of the theft operation. Billy's truck was located at a budget motel in Henderson, Nevada. But Billy had completely vanished using backup vehicles and false identity documents he'd prepared months in advance. The chase began immediately across 4 southwestern states. The cartel mobilized every available resource: cash bribes at truck stations and gas stations, license plate recognition systems on major highways, cell phone tower triangulation technology, and extensive networks of sympathizers and informants across the entire region. But Billy had 30 years of comprehensive highway knowledge working in his favor. He knew which back roads avoided traffic cameras, which truck stations operated off official records, and which operators would help a fellow trucker in trouble without asking uncomfortable questions about the circumstances. The first serious close call occurred in Flagstaff, Arizona. A cartel search team swept through the truck station where Billy was refueling his stolen pickup truck, but he'd hidden in another operator's sleeper cab until the danger passed. The second near miss happened at a police roadblock outside Gallup, New Mexico. Billy took a dangerous detour through known cartel territory, risking immediate capture to avoid potential federal detection. The most dangerous moment came at a remote gas station in Farmington, New Mexico. The elderly attendant clearly recognized Billy from a cartel bulletin offering $100,000 for information leading to his capture. Billy saw the recognition dawning in the man's eyes and was gone before the phone call could connect to cartel security. Throughout the multi-state chase, Billy carried his ultimate insurance policy. 3 complete years of evidence documenting the entire money laundering operation in extraordinary detail. Digital photographs of container contents, GPS tracking logs showing delivery routes and timing, comprehensive financial records of his systematic thefts, and detailed information about names, dates, and locations of cartel operations. The evidence represented far more than personal protection. It constituted proof of a $200 million annual money laundering network that had operated completely undetected by federal law enforcement for years. FBI agent Sarah Chen made initial contact through CB radio emergency frequencies on Billy's 3rd day as a federal fugitive. "Billy Crawford, this is Agent Chen with federal law enforcement. We know exactly what you've been doing, and we know what you've discovered about the cartel operation surrender voluntarily with your evidence, and we'll provide complete federal protection." "How do I know you're really FBI and not cartel?" Billy asked, keying his radio from a hidden position in the Colorado mountains. "Because we've been tracking this specific money laundering operation for over 2 years as part of a joint FBI-DEA investigation. Your theft activities triggered our investigation protocols. You've just provided us with the biggest breakthrough in the entire case." Agent Chen explained the complex federal situation in detail. Billy's systematic thefts had inadvertently exposed Operation Desert Wash, a massive joint investigation into southwestern cartel money laundering that had been stalled for months due to lack of concrete evidence. His detailed documentation provided proof that federal agents had been completely unable to obtain through traditional surveillance methods. "Your testimony could destroy the entire criminal network," Chen explained. "We're prepared to offer complete immunity from prosecution, permanent witness protection with new identity, and a substantial federal reward for your full cooperation with our investigation." Billy's stolen pickup truck broke down in the remote Montana wilderness on September 15th, exactly 12 days after the Las Vegas theft. The pursuing black SUV had been following him for over 200 miles, maintaining just close enough contact to keep him under visual surveillance. His CB radio crackled with intercepted cartel communications. "Target vehicle immobilized at grid reference 847. All units move in for final collection." Billy quickly fortified his defensive position in an abandoned mining station that had been closed since the 1970s. Using his CB radio's emergency broadcast frequency, he began transmitting evidence and intelligence to every law enforcement agency within communication range. "This is Billy Crawford broadcasting critical intelligence about major cartel money laundering operations. I have complete documentation of $200 million in annual illegal transfers through legitimate American businesses." The media response was absolutely immediate and overwhelming. News organizations across the entire Southwest picked up the emergency broadcasts within minutes. Within just a few hours, driver steals $15 million from cartel dominated newspaper headlines from Denver to Phoenix to Los Angeles. Billy instantly became a folk hero, the highway Robin Hood who single-handedly took on organized crime and lived to tell the story. Social media platforms exploded with support for Desert Driver Billy. Operators across America organized rallies demanding federal protection for the man who'd exposed widespread cartel corruption. Federal law enforcement resources mobilized with completely unprecedented speed and coordination. A helicopter extraction team launched immediately from Denver. Joint FBI-DEA task forces activated simultaneously in 4 states to investigate the exposed money laundering network. Congressional leaders scheduled emergency hearings on border security and cartel infiltration. The cartel organization faced an immediate existential threat to their entire American operation. Their carefully constructed $200 million money laundering system was completely exposed to federal investigation. Casino partnerships were terminated immediately. Multiple arrests began occurring across the Southwest. Internal security investigations started to identify and eliminate potential information leaks. Billy's isolated position was surrounded by 6 heavily armed cartel operatives when the FBI rescue helicopter appeared over the mountain ridge. Cartel gunmen immediately opened fire on federal agents, rappelling down extraction ropes, while Billy coordinated the rescue operation over CB radio emergency frequencies. This is Desert Driver federal agents taking heavy automatic weapons fire. Exact grid coordinates: 47.2431 north, 114.1583 west, need immediate backup and medical support for extraction operation. The firefight lasted exactly 12 minutes. According to federal after-action reports, Carlos Mendez was killed while actively resisting arrest and threatening federal agents. 2 other cartel security operatives died during the gun battle. Billy was successfully extracted under combat conditions, immediately becoming the most valuable witness in federal law enforcement custody. Federal prosecutors offered Billy a deal he couldn't possibly refuse: complete immunity from all criminal prosecution in exchange for full cooperation with ongoing investigations, permanent witness protection program enrollment with completely new identity, and the legal right to keep $5 million as an official federal reward for exposing the massive money laundering network. Billy's detailed testimony completely destroyed the cartel's American money laundering operations. 89 separate indictments were issued across the entire network. $400 million in criminal assets were seized by federal agencies. Multiple casino executives were arrested for knowing participation in money laundering. Border security protocols were completely restructured to prevent similar operations. The subsequent trials transformed Billy into a national celebrity and folk hero. Operators nationwide organized massive rallies supporting Highway Billy. Social media campaigns demanded a presidential pardon for his patriotic service. Documentary film rights were sold for $2 million to a major Hollywood studio. But Billy's new protected identity came with a permanent cost of complete isolation. He could never contact anyone from his previous life under any circumstances. The surviving cartel leadership had placed a $10 million bounty on his head, payable to anyone who could locate and eliminate him. He lived under constant federal protection, finding his only remaining purpose in testifying against organized crime operations. 2 years after the trials concluded, Billy Crawford officially died in a staged Montana car accident. His funeral service was attended by federal agents and a few old operators who'd known him for decades. The man buried in Billings Cemetery had lived 56 years as Billy Crawford, legitimate truck operator. But Frank Morrison, a gray-haired operator wearing wire-rim glasses, quietly began operating the highways of the Southwest in a modest Peterbilt truck. His CB radio handle became Desert Driver, and his distinctive voice became familiar to operators across the entire region. Mysterious anonymous tips started reaching FBI field offices on a regular basis. Detailed reports about suspicious freight movements, always accompanied by precise intelligence that led to major arrests and seizures. Border Patrol agents learned to monitor CB broadcasts from Desert Driver, knowing they consistently indicated genuine criminal activity requiring immediate investigation. Billy Crawford had become the ghost of the American highway system, completely invisible but ever present, protecting the roads he knew better than anyone else alive. The cartel remnants still actively hunted him, but they were chasing a legend who existed only in CB radio transmissions and sealed federal witness files. The truck station near Sierra Blanca, where Billy first discovered the cartel funds, became his favorite location for coffee and quiet contemplation. Sitting in his rig with CB radio crackling, he watched other operators refuel and wondered what kind of freight they might be carrying. "Desert driver to all units," his familiar voice carried across the airwaves. "Suspicious convoy moving southbound on Highway 25, multiple vehicles with inadequate documentation. Strongly recommend immediate federal inspection." Some legends never really end. They just change frequencies and keep protecting people. Billy Crawford stole $15 million from the cartel and lived to tell about it. More importantly, he used that theft to expose a criminal network that had operated with complete impunity for years. Sometimes the only way to stop crime is to out-criminal the criminals. Subscribe if you think sometimes breaking the law is the only way to expose real criminals. Hit that like button if you believe Billy was a hero, not a thief. And tell me in the comments, would you have taken that first $100 bill if you discovered millions in criminal funds? Because that single decision changed everything.